Ahead of its UK publication day, the embassy hosted the UK launch of Ethio-American author Maaza Mengiste's acclaimed second novel, The Shadow King. The event was attended by the Ethiopian ambassador to the UK, His Excellency Fissa Shoel, diplomats, and around 70 guests. Set during Italy's 1935 invasion of Ethiopia, The Shadow King explores female power and casts light on the women soldiers written out of African and European history. Since its launch in the United States on the 24th of September, The Shadow King has received numerous accolades, including being included in Time magazine's list of 100 must-read books of 2019 and the New York Times 100 notable books of 2019. In October last year, it was announced that Atlas Entertainment had acquired the rights to make a film based on the novel. Here in the UK, the Times newspaper named the novel Book of the Month. Similarly, The Guardian also named it Book of the Day. Back at the launch, welcoming guests to the embassy, Ambassador Fissa applauded Maaza for narrating Ethiopia's history from a different angle.
What Maaza brought is a new light to the role of women in Ethiopia. Women in Ethiopia at the leadership level were not new to it, but the contribution of the gallant Ethiopian women in the war in 1935 to 1945 was just brought to light by Maaza, and we have to thank her for her labor to come with this new book. But also significant in today's Ethiopia. Ethiopia, half of its cabinet are women, and the most important posts are held by women. Our president is a career civil servant, local, international, is a woman. And the women of Ethiopia are really liberated since we started a reform with my Prime Minister, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, who won the Nobel Peace Prize just a month ago. I encourage Maaza to do again another round on the participation of Ethiopians during the Battle of Adwa. That's also what you need to proceed. Otherwise, I thank you very much. You have contributed your bit, and Ethiopia is in a transition, both political and economic, and our collective psychology, we are in soul searching. So she brought us together. She added up a knowledge that brings Ethiopians together and which will marry us with the rest of Africa. I thank you very much.
Kicking off the night's proceedings, Canongate Books editor Joe Dingley asked Maaza about the novel, the inspiration behind it, her favourite character in the novel, and future projects. This was then followed by questions from the guests. Maaza said it took her 10 years to research and write the novel, and in the process, she had learnt Italian.
The novel is set in 1935 during Mussolini's invasion of Ethiopia. I knew, even before I started writing my first book, that this was a story that I wanted to write. So the about is the invasion of Ethiopia in 1935. I knew that. I also thought I knew the history of this war, which was the history that I grew up listening to as a child in my house. There would be, my grandfather's friends would come for a visit, or somebody else would come in, an elderly man, and usually someone in my family would point out, oh, this person fought in this battle in Ethiopia against the Italians in this section. Oh, this person was, Kanyazmach or Grasmach, or these different titles, and he fought here. This person did this against the Italians. I grew up with the history of a poorly equipped army confronting, at that time, the most powerful military in the world, and the Ethiopians winning. So I thought, this is the story I want to write. I want to do this. The difficulty in this came when I started thinking, okay, this war lasted 5 years. What did people do every day of those 5 years? I know the battles, but people are not charging 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 5 years. What happened in between? That's the war also. And to have these moments of courage and bravery and determination, you have to have been scared at some point. That's what bravery is. You overcome the fear. So what caused the fear? What caused the trauma? And I realized that that was a story I had never heard. No one talks about who's afraid. No one talks about the damage that happens emotionally from being in war. How did people come home and change as human beings? That is what the book is about.
When asked why she focused on women, she said that her research changed everything when she started finding hints and old photographs of Ethiopian women who had been enlisted into the army.
Yeah, you know, initially when I was writing this book, I was not looking at women. I was really trying to reflect the stories that I grew up hearing, which were really of the men of my grandfather's generation, my great-grandfather's generation. I thought this was the war, the women helped, and I wanted to represent what they did. But my research started changing everything, which is what happens with research, which is why it took so long. I started finding little hints that women enlisted in the army. And then I started finding in an album of an Italian photographer, a photograph of a woman with her abisha kamis and a rifle. And then I start finding, at some point, I remember the day I found in the New York Times, November 1935, an article about a woman who picks up the gun of her husband who has fallen in battle, which means she had to be fighting next to him to begin with. She picks up the rifle as he's dying, and leads his men, 2,000 men, to victory in that battle. That was in the New York Times. I found other things in other newspapers, and I started thinking, wow, how do I not know this? We know Empress Aitu, we know Zalitu, we know some of the women who have fought, but I had not heard of that in this war to this extent. And for a novelist, that's a gift.
Before the event, Ambassador Fessaha held a private audience with Maaza, where she presented him with a signed copy of the novel. On this occasion, the ambassador congratulated Maaza on her latest achievement. In an exclusive interview, we also got the chance to speak to Maaza to find out more about her background and inspiration.
I was born in Addis Ababa in the early years of the revolution, and it's one of the reasons that I left Ethiopia. And I lived in Kenya, Nigeria first, Kenya, and then I moved to United States. I've been there ever since. I've had my education in the US, but I've always kept Ethiopia close. I would travel there. I still travel back regularly.
Okay, so at what age did you travel to Kenya?
I think I was 5. Yes.
From Addis?
From Nigeria. I left Addis when I was 4, so I was very, very young. Okay. Yes.
How about your parents?
Well, my mother is back in Ethiopia now, And my father he passed away a few years ago. So now most of my family has been moving slowly back to Ethiopia. So now when I go back, I see most of my family there, not in United States.
How do you develop this writing skill?
Through reading. I was reading as a child. I read everything, magazines, newspapers, books, anything I could find. And from the reading came an idea, maybe I can write. Is
it your first book?
This is my second book. The first book is called Beneath the Lion's Gaze. It's set during the time of the Derg in 1974 into maybe 1978. That was my first book.
Let's come to the Shadow King. Why do you title it Shadow King?
The Shadow King in the book is set during Mussolini's invasion of Ethiopia. When Haile Selassie left Ethiopia to come to England, in my imagination, I said, what if somebody else in Ethiopia looked like Haile Selassie and could pretend to be the king? So when the Italians tell Ethiopians, your king has left, the emperor has left, actually there's somebody who looks like him, who tells the villagers, he didn't leave, let's fight. And so I just imagined the Shadow King.
Is it a historical book or a fiction?
It's fiction, but based on a lot of research. So that's why the book took almost 10 years. I lived in Rome to look in the fascist archives. I did research in Ethiopia as well. So I was traveling back and forth because I wanted to get the historical parts correct, but the book is fiction.
And according to my understanding, the role of women in war, why do you concentrate on that?
I thought it was a very interesting part of history. It was a history I did not grow up hearing. I heard about the war, but until I started finding in documents the details about women who were in the front lines fighting with men, I had no idea about this. So when I found the documentation, I found in the New York Times stories, I found in other newspapers photographs. I said, this is really interesting. And then I said I would like to write this story also from the female perspective. Then I found out when I was writing the book that my great-grandmother went to fight in the war. So it was also in my family, but I had no idea until I was writing this book.
Yeah, regarding fascism in Italy and in Mussolini's time, before that, the Emperor Haile, Menelik's wife, she was a warrior.
Yes.
And did you look at that?
I did. I absolutely looked at that. Zoditu. I looked at the women in the past that was fighting. And one of my questions to myself is, if women in 1935 in Ethiopia, they know about Taitu, they know about the other women, why didn't they say, yeah, we'll fight? Because there's already example. So my story is about those women, and they take inspiration from Taitu.
So how do people receive your book?
It's been really, really wonderful to see Ethiopians embrace the story, to be so supportive of it. In the United States, the book was just released there. I have been very humbled and very grateful for the responses. It means so much to me. Yeah.
So what's your next plan?
Well, I just had a vacation. You should expect a new book. It hopefully will not take that long. I just finished a vacation, so I'm ready to start another book, and I'm thinking about it now.
Do your parents, or do you have some linkage about writing in your families?
Not at all. Not at all. In fact, my family did not want me to write. They did not want it at all. They wanted me to be a doctor or maybe a lawyer or engineer. So they're very relieved that I wrote a book. They were very worried for me.
What do you think of, in general, of Ethiopian women?
I have been very, I don't know if the word is impressed, but seeing everything that Ethiopian women do, historically, but also present day, I'm very humbled when I see the achievements. I always say, I have not met a weak woman. I've met women who have been very quiet, but that doesn't mean they're weak. And Ethiopian women are not weak. Maybe they're quiet, they act shy, but they're very strong.
Yeah, in terms of our history, the women's rights, they have the right to inherit land, they have the right to retain their father's name. So comparing with the Europeans, how do you see it?
That's a trick question. I think Europeans have a long way to go, but I also frankly think we have a long way to go in Ethiopia with full rights for women. But women, there's a generation, this young generation, they're making real change. They're really pushing more discussion, more conversation about the rights of girls and women, safety, so that women are not afraid about being assaulted, about being attacked inside the home or outside the home. We have work to do, but so do Europeans. But when I see the women in Ethiopia pushing for this change and talking and having conversation, those are fighters. In 1935 they were in battle. In 2020 they are having these conversations in public.
How about the people of Ethiopian origin like you, your contribution, like now you are a writer and you are reflecting your thinking about Ethiopia and Ethiopians. Many people will understand how the Ethiopian women are through your books. So what do you advise other Ethiopian diasporas who are born outside?
Well, I think, when I first came to the United States, and there were not many diaspora. Now there's so many. But in the beginning, I was one of the first people to leave because of the Derg and everything. So there were not many people like me. When I would go visit Ethiopia, Ethiopians, they would make fun of me because I'm diaspora. Now there's so many of us. That stopped. But I would tell people who are growing up in the diaspora, your country is Ethiopia. There's more than one way to be Ethiopian. And we have to, as a nation, embrace all the different kinds of Ethiopians because we exist. And if I became shy because some people were mean or rude to me because of my accent or because I'm diaspora, I would never have written this book. So we just have to remember that we can be Ethiopian and we can be different, but this is also our country.
As you know, Ethiopians, we have a very deep and rich culture. So what do you advise the diasporas to retain their culture and to look for it?
We have the greatest history, this greatest civilization in the world. There's so much history still to learn. And I have studied some parts of this history for years, but there's so much I don't know. Learn the history, find your place in that history, and learn that part. So that would be my advice for everyone.
So are you going to also launch your book in Addis?
Yes. I am working. I hope it comes together, and I would really like to do that. Yes.
there are some. No, there is also another writer who's born here, Lemn Sissay. Do you meet him?
I know him very well.
Oh, you met
Yes. So we work together sometimes, and we are talking about something in Addis Ababa together.
Maaza, thank you very much.
As part of a global community project, Maaza also announced plans for a photographic archive of the 1935 to 1941 Italo-Ethiopian War that she is currently working on, entitled Project 3541, which will be launching soon. She encouraged all Ethiopians at home and abroad who may have photographs from that time period to get in touch with her and take part in documenting that part of history. To sign up for updates for the project, please visit the official website www.project3541.com. If you like what you see, please subscribe to our channel by clicking on the subscription button below. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram for daily updates from the Embassy.